They called her beautiful. But beauty was a cage. They called him cold. But silence was his rage. When my ID is Gangnam Beauty ended. The screen faded to white. But what no one saw was that the story didn't stop that night. The cameras froze on Kang Emiray's trembling smile. But beyond that frame, Im Soo-hyang kept breathing her role. Like a ghost trapped in her own name. Cha Eun-woo, calm, ethereal. Do Kyung-suk in another life. Watched her fade beneath the lights. And something in him cracked twice. The first time. When he saw her after surgery. The second. When he saw that she couldn't see herself anymore. Because how do you love a face that no longer feels alive? How do you hold perfection when it's carved from pain and pride? After the finale, the world applauded their chemistry. Fans called it fate. Magazines called it flawless. But beneath those praises was a love story still bleeding quietly. When the lights went down, Soo-hyang sat in her dressing room mirror, staring at the reflection. That looked nothing like the girl she used to be. Her eyes searched for the warmth she'd once known. But all she found was a stranger. One designed to please everyone but herself. Eun-woo entered quietly, hands buried in his jacket pockets. And for a moment, neither spoke. It was that kind of silence that knows too much. The kind that doesn't ask questions. Because it already carries the answers. You did great today, he said softly. She smiled, the same perfect smile the world adored. But her voice broke when she whispered, "Do you think they would still love me if I hadn't changed?" He looked at her reflection instead of her eyes. "I would have." And that was the moment her world stopped spinning. Because sincerity, when spoken by someone who sees through your soul, feels heavier than any confession of love. It was the kind of truth that doesn't heal, it haunts. He loved her before the mirror approved. He loved the awkward girl who tripped on her words and hid behind baggy clothes. The one who laughed too loud and cried too often. He loved her before she erased herself to become acceptable. But the world doesn't reward rawness. It celebrates what's remade. And somewhere between the scalpel and the screen, she lost the softness that made her real. Their friendship lingered after filming wrapped. They went for quiet coffee breaks. No cameras, no stylists, just two people trying to feel normal again. Sometimes they talked about fame, sometimes about fear. And sometimes, not at all. One night, the city hummed like a restless dream beneath them. Rain fell lightly, the cinematic kind that carries memories. Soo-hyang sat beside him on a park bench. A hood pulled over her head, mascara smudged. The way no one had ever seen her before. "I hate that they call me beautiful," she muttered. "Why?" he asked. "Because it feels like I'm only worth what they see." He turned to her then. Eyes calm but burning. "Then stop letting them see what's not you." She looked away, afraid of the way his words reached inside her. Because that's what he always did. He didn't look at her, he looked through her. They say love is gentle. Theirs wasn't. It was raw, suffocating. Too aware of every unspoken truth between them. The kind of bond that blooms quietly, then ruins you when you realize it's real. There was once a scene filmed in secret. A rooftop at dawn. Emiray sitting beside Kyung-suk. Their silhouettes caught between sunrise and sorrow. She asked him, "Do you think I did the right thing?" And he replied, "You did what the world forced you to." Then he reached out, fingers trembling, stopping inches from her face. But the director cut early. The real emotion wasn't meant to be captured. It wasn't acting anymore, it was confession. That moment was never aired. But those who were there said, the silence that followed could break a heart. The truth hid in the pauses, in the ache between two breaths. After the show ended, life went on, at least, that's what it looked like. She filmed new dramas, walked red carpets, and smiled with practiced ease. He sang, modeled, acted. His aura untouchable as always. But there was something haunted behind his eyes. Like a man still watching someone fade away. They saw each other occasionally at industry events. They'd nod, exchange polite words, pretend they were just colleagues. But every time, he noticed the distance. Not the physical one, but the one carved by the world's expectations. She'd become flawless. And he missed her imperfections more than he could say. One evening, he received a letter, handwritten, delicate. The ink smeared as though tears had joined the words. It wasn't signed, but he didn't need a name. He knew that handwriting. They love my face but not my heart. They praise my beauty, but not my truth. Do you still see the girl who hid behind her bangs? He read it 100 times. Each line tore through him quietly. Because yes, he still saw her. He always did. But the world doesn't stop for heartbreak. Months turned into years. And soon, the story that once changed them became another memory folded in time. Yet sometimes, during interviews, when someone mentioned my ID is Gangnam Beauty, he'd pause just a second too long. A ghost flickered in his expression. A memory that refused to die. And somewhere, in another dressing room, Soo-hyang would hear his name and look away, as if avoiding the echo of something sacred. Love like theirs doesn't end. It transforms into silence. It hides in unspoken messages, in songs unsung, in eyes that meet for a second too long, then pretend nothing happened. They met again during a brand shoot. Fate's quiet cruelty at work. She wore white. He wore black. Two contrasts, two ghosts of a love the world mistook for acting. Long time, he said. Feels like yesterday, she replied. But the air trembled between them. There was too much left unsaid. As the cameras rolled, the director asked them to smile, to look at each other the way they did before. And when their eyes met, the world blurred again. For that brief second. It wasn't Do Kyung-suk and Kang Mi-rae. It wasn't Cha Eun-woo and Im Soo-hyang. It was just them. Two souls bound by a story that had outlived its script. When the scene ended, the crew clapped. But he didn't move. She turned away first. And in her eyes was the apology she never spoke. Afterward, he found her sitting alone, watching the city lights flicker on the studio window. He stood behind her, silent as always. Do you regret it? He asked. She didn't look up. I regret changing for people who never saw me. He took a slow breath. I saw you, he whispered. And she smiled sadly. I know. That's why it hurts. No one ever saw them again after that night. Not together, at least. But rumors spread. That they'd been spotted walking near the Han River. That he'd sent flowers to her set. That they still kept a secret promise. Maybe none of it was true. Maybe all of it was. But somewhere between fiction and reality, their story still breathes. Because beauty was never the villain. Perception was. And love, when real, never asks you to be perfect. It just asks you to be seen. Cha Eun-woo once said in an interview, the most beautiful thing is honesty. And those who listened carefully heard the hidden ache behind it. Because maybe he wasn't talking about philosophy. Maybe he was remembering her. Im Soo-hyang, years later, was asked if she ever felt beautiful. She smiled, then paused. Only when I forget what I look like. The crowd laughed softly. But Eun-woo, somewhere across the world, might have smiled too. Because that was the girl he knew all along. Their story didn't end on screen. It just slipped into the quiet spaces. Where true things live. In memories, in gazes, in echoes of what could have been. And maybe that's what makes it unforgettable. Not the romance. Not the beauty. But the truth it left behind. That even the prettiest faces hide hearts still learning how to be loved. They called her beautiful. But she was never meant to be perfect. They called him cold. But he was the only one who saw the fire beneath her silence. When the lights fade, and the world forgets their lines, there will still be two souls, searching for each other in every reflection. Because perfection was never the ending. It was the lie they had to unlearn. And love, in its truest form, was the beauty they could never fix.